That's not a big break. I don't know what it is. When I got back to New York, I had agents knocking on my door. Suddenly everybody was stopping me on the street.
I get that feeling. Oh my God, somebody sees me. I am validated. I'm doing the right thing. They issued 55,000 visas out of 11 million entries that year. So if that's not a random finger from the universe saying, do this, I don't know what is. You know what I mean?
Talk about a big break. It's the Working Actor NYC. That's Benjamin House.
That's Patrick Richwood.
This episode of the Working Actor NYC may contain profanity and some adult concepts, so please use your discretion.
We were thinking about talking about the big break.
The big break.
The mythological big break. Does it exist? Did you ever have one? What was your big break? Or big breaks. I've had a lot of it, actually. I've had a lot of
I was going to say, I get discovered every 5 minutes. I kept having that feeling. Like, I remember in Australia, it was when David Atkins is this extremely well-known performer, director, producer, and he cast me in my first professional show as an adult and in Grease, the musical. And I was like, oh my God, I've been discovered. I've been discovered by David Atkins. And then, a couple of years later, some other director, and they're like, oh my God, where have you been? And you're like, oh my God, I've been discovered all over again.
Okay, that kind of big break, yeah. Being discovered is a lovely feeling. It's better than being found out.
Can you identify when your career took a little step up or a big step up, or the gas pedal was suddenly on the floor because of a particular occurrence, a particular event?
Yeah, it would be. I was doing theater in New York. I was getting somewhere. I was starting to do better productions in regional houses that were good and in New York and off Broadway. And my sister Blair worked for Garry Marshall in his office for several years, and she was always talking me up. She was his assistant. She was like the second in command, and she had a lot of responsibility on the set. Her name was known by every actor Garry ever worked with because Blair was always being called for, and she was always talking me up because I was always this ham that I am. And we also had a mutual friend, in my mother's dear friend, Tom Kuhn, who went to Northwestern with Garry. So he was Garry's age, and Tom had seen me in everything I ever was in because he was an old friend of the family. So he was always talking me up too. So between the two of them, Garry Marshall finally said, all right, I'll meet this guy. And so my sister called me.
At that time, what was Garry sort of famous for at that time?
Happy Days.
Happy Days.
He was famous for Happy Days. He was famous for Laverne and Shirley and a lot of other things, but he had been a writer on your show of shows, and he had been a Dick Van Dyke Show, and he had been, he was already a big somebody, but he was a huge producer and director of Happy Days. And Happy Days was one of the most successful TV series that the television has ever seen, which is,
it's funny because I can think of Henry Winkler and Ron Howard, but I'm trying to think who the women were. Who were the women in Happy Days?
Well, it was really revolved. The mom, Marion Ross. And I think her name was Marion on the show. And Tom Bosley was the dad.
Tom Bosley. Yeah.
Yeah, and it made Henry Winkler a star from this little part where like, hey, and it was based, I think it was inspired by the film American Graffiti. I think that's correct. I think Garry said, I want to do that as a TV series. Because a lot of those people were in the movie. Ron Howard was in the movie. Henry Winkler was in the movie. Anyway, very successful TV series. And he was directing films now. And he had done the film Coca-Cola Kid with I think it was with Matt Dillon. And the film Nothing in Common with Tom Hanks and Jackie Gleason and Eva Marie Saint, which they never show on TV. And it's one of his best
I don't know
films.
that one.
I think that's one of Garry's best, funniest, most well-constructed films. I think it's Jackie Gleason dies in it. He plays Tom Hanks's dad, who shows up on Tom Hanks's doorstep in Chicago because he and his wife Tom Hanks's parents have gotten divorced, like in their 60s, and it's hilarity ensues. And Tom Hanks runs an ad agency, so you're constantly seeing all the writers and working in the ad agency and doing pitching ideas. It's very, very. And Garry got a bunch of people from a group of people from Second City in Chicago and put them in the movie. Anyway,
Oh wow.
it's a great movie, but nothing in common. So I'll get back to that because that's my big break. So Blair said to this starving actor in New York, working for a company where I did characters at high-end parties. She said, "What you need to? I'm flying you out here. Gary's agreed to meet you for a tiny part in this film that he's directing called Mystery Bitch, which became that's the movie that became Overboard with Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell."
Okay.
And so I said, "Well, I can't afford." Blair said, "I'm flying you out here." So she flew me out there, and while I was in the air, the little role was written out. But Garry very generously agreed to meet with me anyway, probably to get these people off his back. And I remember we had this wonderful meeting in this great big beautiful plush office on the front of the old Warner Brothers building right on Olive Avenue, looking out over these big mature pine trees, and it was really lovely. And I started doing my characters for him, and I just started making him laugh, and pretty soon he was howling and I was doing the oldest waiter in the world who was in vaudeville and doing the jokes and bad jokes. What do you call a man with no arms or legs plays 10 musical instruments? Stump the band. Okay, that guy. And he's a waiter. He's a waiter. And I did them all for him. I had a faded matinee idol from the silent era whose name was Leslie Furthermore. And he wore a smoking jacket. And anyway, he really liked all that. And he said, "I don't have anything in this movie for you, but I'll tell you what, I think I have an idea for a part would you be interested in a small part in a TV series I'm producing?" I said, "No, thank you. Do you have anything in wardrobe?"
No, I'm good. I don't want to work in television. No, I'm
Yeah.
good.
I was like, "Sure." And he goes, "It'd be small part, but that's how Henry Winkler started." And I'm just thinking, is this possible? So I go, "Great." I mean, yeah. And then I hugged him.
Sign me up.
Yeah. I said, "I'm a hugger. Bring it in. Bring it in." So, and I was 23 or something like that. And then I went back to New York and I told all my pals in the theater, in the company, in the troupe, I was like, "Garry Marshall's writing a part on that TV series for me." And they were all like, "Uh-huh."
Yeah, sure he is. Uh-huh.
Smile and nod at Patrick when he walked. Just smile and nod. Don't engage. Don't look him in the eye. Don't look him in the eye.
Oh my God.
And then about 3 weeks later, I feel like it was not more than that, I got a call from my sister Blair who said, "What are you doing next Monday?" And I said, "Oh, well, I've got a gig." And she said, "I'm sorry, let me rephrase that for the save time. Here's what you're doing next Monday. You're flying in because Garry has written a part for you on a network TV series, and they want to test you at the network." And I'm like, "Are you kidding?" She's like, "No, I'm flying. I'm getting you another airline ticket." So I flew in. I'm from California, so I stayed with my dad
Yeah.
in Toluca Lake and waited for the phone to ring. And the phone rang, and it was the lawyers from the studio from TriStar Pictures, where it was producing it for NBC. And they
Was that
said,
the one with the white horse?
"The
And
horse, yeah, the
yeah,
Pegasus,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah."
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's it.
They said, "Well, we've got your contracts here. We're ready to have a meeting." And I was like, "Well, don't I have to test for the network?" And they were like, "No, Garry wrote this part for you, so if you don't take it, it's getting cut." And I was like, "Okay." I didn't have an agent. So Tom Kuhn, the mutual friend that went to Northwestern, is a big television producer. It was really did a lot of great stuff back in this iconic stuff in the 70s and 80s and 90s. So he said, "I'm going to get you, my entertainment lawyer is going to do it for you gratis." Big firm, Weissman and Wolf, Stan Weissman of Weissman Wolf, big law firm. This was before CAA made agencies a thing. So I got to sit in this office that was really like out of a movie, like the corner office on Wilshire Boulevard, on the 40th floor, and listen to this guy negotiate on my behalf for a series regular on a network series on NBC that was going to air while we were shooting on Thursday nights, right between Cheers and LA Law. On Cosby night, that was called Cosby night. That's Thursday night was it. That was
Oh
TV
yeah.
night. You had a captive audience because Cheers was the biggest hit and LA Law was a huge hit. So, and I was to play Myron Nipper, the intern at the ad agency in Chicago.
Myron Nipper.
Yep. Anyway, I went to LA. I was suddenly on national television. When I came, the show was canceled. We didn't make
What was
it.
the show called?
Nothing in Common after the film.
Nothing in common. Oh, I see. I see.
Yeah. And it didn't work for a myriad of reasons, but it sure worked for me. I got all my laughs. And I was too stupid to know, get an agent, get settled, do this, take advantage of this. I didn't know, and certainly didn't know, because nobody knew this, because this wasn't a thing then. Oh, you have to be on a TV series to get on Broadway. That wasn't a thing then. They were separate,
Right.
separate.
And you wanted to be on Broadway.
Yeah. So I had no idea what I mean, I knew what I had, but I didn't know how to strategize or take advantage around it. I really just didn't know. I just was
Right.
surfing the wave I found myself on. I mean,
Yeah.
now if that's not a big break, I don't know what it is. When I got back to New York, I had agents knocking on my door. Suddenly everybody was stopping me on the street. People that I admired were saying, "Hey, I really like you on that show," and I was just like, I mean, it was life was different. And then things went on. I worked for Garry Moore. I went out back out. Did go back out there, and I did Beaches, and then I did Pretty Woman, and blah blah blah. And so he really he gave me my big break. I mean, thanks to my sister and Tom Kuhn. But that's not supposed to happen. There's no rule book that says get ready for this because this is going to happen. Every rule book says don't even think about this happening.
Don't think anybody's sister is gonna be an assistant to the assistant of Garry Marshall, of a huge Hollywood producer,
Let
director,
alone that he'll
writer, who's gonna
actually take a meeting with you.
who is going to take your meeting, and who is going to fall in
He's
love with you,
gonna
and
like
who
you.
is going to
He
write
is
a part for
gonna
you in a
write a part for
TV
you.
series.
And it is going to air on NBC on Thursday night while you're shooting.
I think that's an excellent big break. I love that
Yeah.
story so much.
I haven't told that story a long time. Now, what would you say is a big break of you that we should really? I mean, again, that's the caveat is, they don't come along like.
I think I feel as though I keep getting big breaks because every time somebody gives me that feeling of that they have discovered me, I get that feeling, oh my God, somebody sees me. I am validated. I'm doing the right thing. Like somebody's laughing at my joke. Somebody thinks my singing is pretty, or somebody's crying because I'm crying. You know what I mean? Every time somebody says something nice to me, I'm like,
Well, that's one of the things that's so great about you. You haven't gotten jaded.
oh, sure. I'm sure I am about some things. I'm sure
No,
I am.
you're not.
Oh,
I'm telling you, you're not. I've never seen you be jaded about the business at all.
I guess I'm not jaded because I'm not afraid to say no. Does that make sense? It's sort of like, oh, will you do this? Like I remember saying to myself, oh, I'm not going to do free theater anymore. There
Right.
used to be a contract in New York City, and I have no idea if it still exists, the Showcase contract.
Yeah, I don't know if it still exists.
I don't know either, but when I first arrived in New York, I did a ton of them
Yeah.
because I
Yeah.
was, connecting with writers and directors or other actors, and they're like, "Oh my God, you have to come do this thing with us. Come and do this thing with us." And so I did a bunch of them, and it may even be true that my first review in the New York Times came from came from one of those unpaid Showcase contracts, because the whole point of it was like, oh, here, we're giving you the opportunity to be seen by New York. And
Yeah.
the truth is that ain't nobody going
Yeah.
to those things except your friends.
Your friends, exactly. Because they're free with your equity card.
Exactly. So my big showcase was to people who liked me already. So I was like, what the fuck am I doing here? Um,
But you make a good point about big breaks are often there are two kinds. There's the kind where that actually promotes you and your career, and then there's which are really so random in a way. I don't know. I can't explain. I certainly can't explain it.
in terms of my life, I can certainly point to when I moved to America, I was on a student visa. 2 weeks after I arrived in America on my student visa, I got a letter from the US government saying, you have been randomly selected to move forward in the diversity visa program, and your interview for your green card is in 3 months. So they issued 55,000 visas out of 11 million entries that year.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
if that's not a random finger from the universe saying, do
yeah,
this, I don't know what is. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So
yeah. That's
certainly,
talk
like,
about a big break.
that's a big break. Like,
It's huge.
6 months later, I met my husband, the man who is now my husband.
Well, that's what I was going to say. There's different kinds. There's the kind that promotes you in your work, but then there's the kind that promotes you in your life, which also promotes you in your work. Because the richer your life, the richer your work, the happier and more well-rounded you are. So I don't
Yeah.
sort of see much of a. I mean, I see a difference, of course, but I don't think I see an importance difference. Like I can't see which would be more important because they're both essential. Those are essential kinds of breaks. Would you say? There's a formula? Would you say it's because I was X, Y, and Z, or because da 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 da?
Prepared.
I don't know if I can. Prepared. Okay.
Prepared.
Okay. Okay.
Um, because what I'm thinking right now is I just got a big break a few months ago when they decided that I wasn't going to be the understudy of the Earl of Lenwich in Regency Girls at the Old Globe. They were going to make me the role. They were
Yeah.
going to give me the Earl of Lenwich.
Yeah.
But that was because I was prepared with the material,
Yeah.
and also because I know what makes me laugh. Like reading that material, I could go, oh, this could be really funny if I do
Yeah.
blank. You know what I mean? But that's
Don't you
my
love that?
combination of being prepared with the material, but also having a take on it that I knew was going to be really funny to me.
Yeah.
And so thankfully it aligned with what enough of them in the room thought was
They love
funny.
it.
And so
So the two things you've identified already are preparedness and also like leaning into what makes it yours.
it's exactly right.
Unique. Unique.
I have managed to, and this is an ongoing process, but I have managed to let go of trying to get it right. To when I get an audition or whatever, trying to get the material right.
Oh
There
yeah.
is no right. I just got to make it mine
It's such
and
an
do it
easy
in
trap to
my
fall
way.
into, though. You start thinking this is the way it's supposed to be, and that,
But
there's
then you
so
end
much
up
you
looking like
lose.
everybody else. You end up looking like everybody else.
Well, I'll never end up looking like everybody else because let's face it, they broke the mold. They broke the mold. In fact, they broke the mold on my face. They cracked it right all over my head
They took one look at you and thought, well,
and
we're
took
not
the
making
mold and
another one of
hit me
those.
with it. They hit me with it. The face that
We're
launched
not
a
doing that
thousand
again.
ship. What is it that makes you finally own yourself as an actor and really
Oh, I love
own
this
it?
conversation. Yeah.
And for me, it was helpful that I was already so fucking weird. I mean, and I say that with a lot of self love. I don't mean weird like. I mean weird like goofy. Like I was just always, if all the unicorns were yellow, I was the purple one, and there was just no way I could deny that. You can't hide it, in other words, and so you just finally become it. You're faster to own it because you can't hide behind dashing looks or something.
Well, that's the thing. I can relate it back to my experiences as a teenager, growing up knowing I was gay, but desperately not wanting to be bullied or ostracized or I just wanted to be like everybody else, right? I hung on to
Yeah.
that for far longer than was serving me. Not as a gay person, but as a performer, I certainly wanted to be. I don't know if that's true actually, because I know I wanted to be better than I wanted to be the best actor in the room. And I didn't want to be known as a gay actor. I wanted to be known as an actor.
Yeah.
So there was a bit of a struggle going on there. And I think as soon as I let the struggle go, that's when the ease came about. It's just like, listen, this is what makes me laugh about this material. If it makes them laugh too, that's great. And if it
Great.
doesn't, that's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Because, you know,
I had
we're
a
always
friend
going
who
to disagree.
who's a director, and he's very got a lot of wisdom about this stuff. And he says, "I hear you need a Earl of Linwich. Here's my Earl of Linwich. Hope you like it. If you don't
Yeah.
like it, put it back on the rack. It's fine. But
Yeah,
this is
yeah.
my Earl of, and for the next 10 minutes, the part is mine." But let me ask you something. So you said, as soon as I gave up trying to be like everybody else, as soon as I gave that up, then it all fell into place. What had you give that up, do you think?
When I moved to New York, I had many years of dance experience under my belt.
Under your dance belt?
Under my aged dance belt. And so I would go to dance calls. I would go to chorus calls for dancers. And it was very quickly that I realized that my dance skills were nowhere near at the quality and level of execution compared to the people who were getting booked, you know. And so I had to find out what was unique and different and interesting about my performance. And so it was something that I just had to learn over time. I don't think there was a lightning bolt aha moment where all of a sudden the clouds parted and I figured it out. It's still an ongoing struggle. Now that I'm thinking about big breaks, I wonder if it's something that has changed with me with age, is that I'm not looking for them anymore in the same way that I was 20 years ago, because I can sort of see, was it last year or the year before? I worked with,
Are you going to drop a name?
put down the crash mats because I'm about to drop a few names. But
Oh my
in
God.
one
Okay.
12-month period, I worked with Steven Soderbergh, John Doyle, and Kenny Leon.
Let me get those.
Now,
Hold on. Here you go. Let me give those back to you.
but you know what I'm saying? It's like 20 years ago, Benjamin's wig would have blown off with
Now
any single
it's
one of
staple gunned on.
Now, no, you can't see it anymore. But
That's how good it is.
and it's not that I'm not impressed by winning the opportunity to work with those fantastic directors. It's just that I don't hang the same importance on them, perhaps.
Your self-worth isn't attached to it. That's the deal.
That's it.
Yeah, it's not. I'm so glad that you said that, because that's what I knew we were going to come around to before wrapping this up. I just knew we were going to come around to the realization that we both have made in the past, but I've never articulated it, that big breaks aren't what it's about. They could be big deals. They could be really big deals. But in the end, I have held the hand of both my parents at the end of their lives as they left this world. And I've been there for friends who have died, as have you, or the ends of people's lives. Nobody's celebrating their big breaks when they're dying. They're thinking about the things that they're glad they did, or the things they wish they'd done more of. Hopefully the former. Because those things, even though they're huge in the moment, they are not what it turns out life is about. They're not.
It's interesting because obviously the big sexy attraction about a big break is the way that it makes you feel. And I can tell you from my life experience that I can feel seen and recognized and loved and appreciated in ways that have nothing to do with my career, that are just as meaningful to me as that time that David Atkins kept calling me back and calling me back and calling me back and finally giving me a part in his production of Grease back in 1991.
Big breaks are like, I'm not poo-pooing them. I'm grateful for each and every one. I've had lots of them. If you're jonesing for a big break because you think that's what's needed, you're in trouble. Not only will you not draw it to you, if it's out there to be drawn to you, you'll push it away. You're betting on a horse that isn't there.
I'm wondering if it is an indicator in a way that you're dissatisfied in some other area of your life.
Well, now we're getting into a whole different kind of talk show.
Some whole pop psychology.
That's what that is right there. I know what I like.
Now listen, I want to make sure that our listeners and viewers know that they can ask us to talk about anything, and they can do
I wish
that
they
by
would.
leaving comments under YouTube videos.
I love it when
after
they do
they've
that.
liked the video and subscribed to the channel.
As one does.
And they can also DM us on our Instagram page, The Working Actor NYC.
That
So
sounds vaguely dirty.
tell us.
DM me.
I'm not mad about the DMs.
DM me. That sounds weird.
Well, now it's weird, Patrick. Now it's On next week's episode of The Working Actor NYC, Patrick reveals his dirtiest DMs.
That sounds awful.